study is really important to me and to you, and those that log on and to want to be part of it. It's because we are very, very interested in end time prophecies and see how it is fulfilled in the Bible and also is going to be fulfilled. Having said that, I understand from you, we will start this evening with the questions that you have put on the screen here. Yeah. So I see here, remember, I don't see the questions before the time, I just see it now. So in Revelation 9 verse 6, it says, men in those days shall seek death and not find it. That's correct. That is under one of the trumpets. Does this mean for the full 5 months, they literally not taste death? What is the significance about it being 5 months? What does the number 5 signify? Thank you, Eben. So first of all, I want to say, let's just get the context. Revelation chapter 9, we deal with the fifth trumpet. Now, the fifth trumpet is part of the seventh seal. So here's the interesting thing. So let's first get the context correct. The context of Revelation 9 and the question that's posed there is part of the outcome, the prophecy of what will happen the day when the seventh seal is opened by Jesus himself. Because Jesus was the one in Revelation 5 that took the scroll out of the hand of him who sits on the throne. To get to what is in the scroll, which is read in the front and the back, Jesus opened the seals one by one. Revelation chapter 6, Revelation chapter 7, Revelation chapter 8, Revelation chapter 9, even up to Revelation chapter 11, we see one after the other the seals open. So the question that's posed here in Revelation 9 verse 6 pertains to happenings in the world during the fifth trumpet. What is significant about the fifth trumpet is that what's going to happen at that point in time is that demonic creatures will come out of the abyss. They are currently, these demons, they are bound in the abyss, which is in the bottomless pit, in the bowels of the earth. And there is a covering which we know, like for instance, it says, and they will open up the bottomless pit, and when they open up, there's a king, verse 11, and they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, the name Apollyon. It's very interesting, Andre, that we are given the Hebrew and the Greek name. Yep. Which means that these demons pertains to all nations of the earth, not only to the Jews, to Israel, not only to the heathen nations, but to Jews and heathens alike. I mean, that's why they give his name in Hebrew and his name in Greek. Very interesting. Yeah. But he's called the destroyer, which means destroyer. So he is there to destroy. What do happen is in the first woe with this trumpet, what we do find, there's three woes. The fifth trumpet, the sixth trumpet, and the seventh trumpet is demonic activity on earth. While 1, 2, 3, and 4 trumpets pertains to the earth itself, to the sea, the waters, and the heavenly bodies around the earth. But what is different, Andre, in Revelation 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 is it is demonic activity, demons, as well as fallen angels and the devil himself. So when we go back to the question, now when we look afresh to that question in Revelation 9 verse 6, that men will seek death and find it not. This is part of God's judgment. In the first 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation. So what we read here will take place after the rapture, but before the middle of the 7-year tribulation. That is Revelation 9, finds its fulfillment in that time frame period in world history. For us, it's still future, but when you pass this time in world history, it will be history. So let's look at it. So the question is, during the fifth trumpet, demonic creatures, demons will be released from the bottomless pit, from the abyss, and they will torture men and women, the inhabitants of the earth. Their instructions is very, very clear. The instructions is they are not allowed to kill people. But verse 5 says that they will torment people for 5 months. So their work that they need to do of destruction is not to kill, but only to harm and inflict severe pain on all human beings that they can find.
Yeah, that's right.
Andre, what is interesting is that 5 months. Why not 7 months and why not a year? I think because 5 in the Bible is the number of grace.
Yeah.
So by God's grace, it's not 5 years, it's not a year, but only 5 months. So that is part of the grace of God, that people will be tortured. And you know, it will be like the sting of a scorpion. It's very painful.
Yeah.
And so people will desire to die. But because that pain will inflict so much pain on them and cause them to be lame, they will want to die, but they can't die. Because God will instruct death to flee away from mankind.
Yeah.
So people would love to commit suicide.
And
they would love to die in their millions and in their billions, and they will not be allowed to die. Now, of course, some people will die. You just go in a big building and you jump off the roof of the building and you will be dead anyway. But because of what happens, the power was in their tail with the sting of a scorpion. They will hurt men for 5 months. They will desire to die, but I believe it will cause lameness that people will not be able to commit suicide.
Is that where it says that death will depart from them?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That's what it is. Is that people will want to die and it will not be possible to die. That is literally, it's not only figuratively speaking. I mean, literally, people will desire. What the Bible actually are telling us, people will do anything to die during those days, but it will not be allowed. Not so easy to get out. Not so easy. So, and the number 5, of course, reflects in the Bible grace. I wrote an article on numbers, and maybe I can sometime tell you where to find it, where I deal with the number 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 14, even 400. So then we can do a study on that. Because like the number 12 has to do with God's reigning power. 7 is the completion and fulfillment. And But now the second question, is there any significance to the third of the world for the third trumpet? Is the same the third of the world, regions, countries impacted of all the surface of the world? The question is about why only a third? Well, because we are only in Revelation chapter 8. When you get to Revelation chapter 16, the whole earth and all of the seas is involved. This is only partially, because if God would allow it to be full on worldwide, as we see in Revelation chapter 16, nobody on earth will be alive.
That is correct.
They will all die away.
Yep.
This is also part of the grace of God, that people still get time. So it's only a third of vegetation, only a third of the seas, only a third of the waters, and only the third of the heavens is struck, as we rightly see in the Revelation chapter 8.
That makes me think of Matthew 24, where Jesus, when he spoke about the great tribulation, the second 3.5 years, was so much worse than what the first half was. So he said it in that part of the scripture.
Yes. And Jesus also said that if the days those days haven't been shortened, nobody would stay alive.
That's exactly right.
So we will see as we go along in the book of Revelation, incredible things, terrible things that will befall the earth. People will not be able to get away from it. That is why the Lord plead with us to come during this time of grace to him. Because when it gets to the judgment, and God's judgment and plagues over the earth, it's not going to be a place that you want to be around. I mean, Jesus actually, like you rightly said there in Matthew 24, that there's never been such a time on earth, and there never will be. When the pest came in the 16th century and other centuries in Europe, even half of Europe died. Here, half the earth dies. Not of a country or of a little bit, just a small portion of the earth. Here, half the earth dies away. So this is going to be terrible. As to the third question, understand that the fourth trumpet will impact the whole world, being the moon stars. Same question for third. Does it affect the whole world? Absolutely. It will affect the whole world because God is dealing with the whole world. When we get to Revelation 16, the tables are turned a little bit because some of the judgment is then just caused over the kingdom of the Antichrist. So, Andre, here's a very interesting thing for people that didn't know. All these plagues and these judgments is real.
Yeah.
It's literal.
Yeah.
But also it's supernatural.
Yes.
Supernatural because God caused it.
Yeah.
It's not something happens in the heavenlies by chance.
Yeah, it's not nature.
No. This is God ordained. Even what happens in nature is God ordained.
Yeah.
It's God's judgment.
That's right.
Now, when you go back to the book of Exodus and you look at the 10 plagues, before Israel left Ramses and went into the desert, the 10 plagues that happened, some of the plagues was in Goshen, where the Israelites lived, and it was in the whole of Egypt. Other plagues later on only took place in Egypt, but not in Goshen, where the Israelites was. God said, from now on, I make a difference between who belongs to me and to you, Pharaoh, you and your people, the Egyptians. So what we see here in Revelation 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 16, that some of it pertains to the whole earth, all the inhabitants of the earth, Israel, the Gentiles, the Antichrist, his kingdom, and all other kingdoms. And other times, it pertains to a specific group of people or to a specific region, like the kingdom of the Antichrist, like we see in Revelation chapter 16. So the Bible is very clear when the judgment pertains to the whole world. And when it pertains only to a particular people. So the question was a third of the moon. Well, the moment that this judgment, that the trumpet, that the effect of that trumpet being blown affects the moon, the sun, and the stars, then it entails everybody that live on earth. They will see and feel the effects.
Yeah. So this will also be a third of the moon, third of the stars, and third of the sun.
Absolutely. And it will have a devastating effect on human life because a third of the day doesn't exist to work.
Yeah. So our daytime could be the third. That's bring dark.
That's what's going to happen. It says a third of the moon was stuck, a third of the stars and the sun, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. So the night, 4 hours is gone, and the day, 4 hours is gone.
Wow.
So 8 hours in a 24-hour cycle, people are looking for it. 8 hours is gone.
Thank you, Jesus, for your grace.
That we will not be around when this is going to happen.
It is so good. But, it's excitement. It's a lot of excitement. But on the other hand, it gives me a bit of a feeling of it's sad because of so many people that just don't want to listen.
Yes.
So,
And it goes back like to the days of Noah and Luke chapter 17, and also the days of Lot. Because in the days of Noah, I mean, that preacher Noah, he preached 120 years, not one convert.
yeah.
Not one convert.
Wow.
Only his family went with him in the ark. Not one human being on the planet ventured into the ark. Not one. Not a single soul believed Noah. And then when it started raining, people were saying, well, it's going to stop soon.
Yeah.
When it reached their knees, they think, well, one of these days it's going to stop raining. And when it reached their thighs and their chest, what's going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they realized, but it was too late.
And then everybody died. And in the days of Lot, when he and his family were led by the two angels out of Sodom and Gomorrah, the young men who would marry Lot's two daughters, they wouldn't believe their father-in-law to be. They wouldn't believe him. And they all died. I mean, everybody died in the days of Lot in those cities. Everybody died on earth in the days of Noah. They wouldn't believe. Now, God's saying, I'm coming back. There's going to be a judgment on earth. And I'm going to take out more than half of the earth population. Not all the earth, but more than half of the earth population.
Yeah, all those people that died. All those people that died is going to be in front of the white throne judgment.
Sure, all the lost souls, they will be there. So to answer that question, yes, it will impact the whole world. So, Andre, here's the bad news. Here's the bad part of it. Even if you're a Christian in the days of the 7-year tribulation, the first 3.5 years, you're not going to get away from all these judgments.
Yeah, that's true. You're going to die. You're going to pay with your own blood.
Sure.
Very clear.
Yeah. Will all the people be killed through the 7-year tribulation? No, never. Because if they were all killed, where is the sheep nations?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So they must be.
I'm listening.
So there must be a certain amount of people, because what did you say just earlier? That in Matthew 24, Jesus said, if those days was not shortened, everybody should have been killed. That's the proof. So I didn't even think of that. This is why I basically put that question up. But it's very true, because it's quite clear that there's going to be people left that will go into the 1,000-year reign.
Absolutely. And now here is the difference. The people that hate the Jewish nation, Israel, they will all be part of the armies of the Antichrist to kill all Jews and Israelites in the country of Israel, in the Middle East. And they will be part of that great wars that will take place at the end of the 7-year tribulation. They will all die. So let me put it this way. Yes, the goat nations, all of them will die. The answer is yes. And it will be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. Very true. Wow. But if the question pertains to all the people of the earth, the answer is absolutely no. Why? Because the Bible teaches us that there will be millions of people that will still be alive and go into the 1,000-year tribulation, have an opportunity to hear the gospel from the Jewish nation that Jesus is now in Jerusalem. His temple is there, and they can come and see their Messiah. So according to Matthew 25, the goat nations, when Jesus comes, he will divide between the goat nations and also the sheep nations. As we read that Matthew 25, verse 31, where the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the holy angels with him, he will sit on his throne. The nations will be gathered before him. The nations, and it's the end of the 7 year.
Yeah, yeah.
And they will be gathered. He will separate them from one another as a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats. And so he will, all the goat nations, they will be chucked in hell. But the sheep nations will be allowed to enter the millennium. So, Andre, many people would ask me last week, so what about South Africa? Because we, like South Africans, you yourself and your family come from South Africa, and some of your friends. And so, to my knowledge, at this point in time, we are still a sheep nation because we don't have armies. Our people, they can't go and fight with Israel. I mean, we can't even fight with people around our borders at the moment. Our army means nothing. Yeah. Our Air Force means nothing. Our Navy means nothing. I mean, really, it's pathetic. So I don't know who they want to fight. We have a few thousand people helping the Congolese and the people in countries like Mozambique and so on. But I mean, we don't even have an army that we can send to go even fight against Israel. But, you know, our previous government, coming from the Dutch Reform background, believing that the church is Israel and Israel the church, which is not true. But because of that, they had a very good relationship with Israel. But our current government, they do not respect Israel at all, which means, you know, they would like to, you know, rather support the Palestinians instead of the people of God, those that came from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the nation of Israel. But so there will be, like in Latin America, Argentina, Chile, many Latino American countries that have many Christians, many of these countries, they will not be part of the fight against Israel in the days of the 7 year. Canada and many other countries. And so even America, for what I believe at the moment. So yes, there will be, the question is, will all people be killed? No, they will not be killed. Okay.
Please explain the half an hour silence in the seventh seal.
Yeah. Well, there's only one answer. There will be no woman in heaven. I mean, if there's no woman, I mean, it's going to be very quiet. I mean, so if you ever wanted to prove that only men go to heaven, you've just found it. I mean, no, I'm just teasing. My wife must forgive me for saying this. If she knows I said it, she will, you know, tell me, hey, what are you saying? The silence in heaven, Andre, to be more biblically correct, is the forebode of the terrible contents of that seal. In other words, the meaning is clear. There's a sacred silence that precedes the judgment that's going to take place. Because the silence testifies to the sympathy of those in heaven, you and me. We will be at that time in heaven. We know what's going to happen to the inhabitants of the earth. And so heaven will be shocked and there will be silence because what is going to happen on earth is going to be so terrible that heaven is silenced just by taking note of what is going to happen now on earth. Because what's going to happen now on earth is God's judgment, God's doing, and it's going to be terrible. Nothing like this has ever existed since the day God created Adam. Terrible time. And for the people in heaven, there will be a half an hour of silence. Now, you know, lately, when a sports star dies and they want to play a game, they all keep quiet for 1 minute. People bow their heads, you know, in reverence of this or that guy that died. Well, we're going to bow our heads and we're going to be quiet because we're going to feel very sorry for what's going to happen to the people on the earth. Therefore, there's a silence in heaven. You know, Andre, more than that, and later on we will read in the book of Revelation, when it gets to the vials, Revelation 15:16, that God allows no one even to come close to him in his temple when that judgment is poured out over the earth. Reason for that, God wants to be alone because this is a people he made. And now there's going to be terrible judgments before these people. People are going to go crazy. They're going to lose their minds.
Yeah.
They will lose their minds. Their hearts is going to fail because now God is going to deal with the world firsthand, not on a second and third hand basis, but on a first hand basis. So this is terrible, terrible things that's going to happen on earth. And when that time comes, now there's only half an hour silence. But when that time comes, there's not only silence, God wants no one, not Elijah, not Enoch, not Moses, no one. Nobody. It also says that until the end of all the plagues, no one is allowed to even come into the presence of God. So, it is God's, the wrath of God. And it can also be that, it breaks God's heart so much that these things has to take place, that no one is allowed to be even close to God.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, if I think of my own family, it's, if I'm in a situation where I see that there's a lot of people getting lost and they're very close to me, and this is how for God it was the same because He created them, so that because of that closeness, you can't imagine before you're really in that position how bad it is.
No,
so,
and there's even a verse that will also say that for the people that die in that time, it is better. It is better to die. The Bible actually says you are blessed when you die.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine, Andre, how terrible must be things on earth that you are called blessed when you die? So people, they fool around, not believing that this time is coming.
Yeah.
And me and you are only discussing now some events that will take place in the beginning, in the first 3.5 years. We're not even in the second part of the Great Tribulation.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So as to our questions today, I think it gives us a very good foundation that when we come back next week and we have a look and we continue our search in the book of Revelation of answers as concerning future events, and when we go physically because me and you, we have already come through the first 6 seals. Now, next time we come together, we can go to the 7th seal and see what physically really happens on earth in that time, knowing we are only looking now still in the first 3.5 years, which, if you think about it, Andre, it's only 42 months.
Yeah.
It's only 1,260 days.
Yeah.
But every day will be like a year.
Yeah.
Every year will be like a decade because of what's happening on earth.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Still very difficult to even think.
Comprehend what's coming.
Yeah.
But think for a moment, how would you comprehend if you knew that everybody that's outside the ark is now going to die? Not one living human being will be in 40 days from this moment, in 40 days, not one living soul on earth. No animal, no human being, nobody that have breath in their nostrils will be alive on the planet 40 days from now. Can you just think how Noah must have felt in his heart when God locked the door of the ark? He didn't lock it. The Bible says, when you go and read in Revelation 6, Genesis 6 and 7, that when they went into the ark, God locked the door. So when the rapture takes place, the door is locked to flee the earth. You can only flee earth through death.
Yeah, and it's going to be quick.
And terrible. And terrible. People will be martyred. People will be slaughtered. People will die a slow death. There's many things going to happen. People will die a terrible death because of all these locusts, all these demons, and all the fallen angels. I mean, yeah, this is terrible. And we should warn people, and that's why we're having these discussions about end-time prophecy. Not to scare anybody, but to look the biblical facts in the eye and say, this is what God has ordained for this world. Because God has to bring an end to the world the way it is, so that it can be a new heaven and a new earth. I mean, thank God it's not the end.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, this will reach the end. And then there will be new things, you know.